In a relationship, it's extremely important that you don't stay hungry.
You don't fall in love at first sight. You fall in love at first bite.
Please keep yourself satiated, whether it is through food, whether it is through emotional intimacy.
Today on this episode of Ask the Expert, we are talking about the world's favorite topic, food.
Sharing food was one of the earliest ways in which individuals bonded with each other.
We are joined by Miss Mohini Mehta, a culinary anthropologist, which basically means she studies why your dating life might be ruined by your menu choices.
The word companionship comes from that, the root, and pan is the word for bread.
Yes.
Also the phrase breaking the bread together. So it's not just like, a simple thing. You become very close to each other when you eat together.
We are decoding everything. Is love like a slow-cooked biryani or instant noodles? And why in many cultures, marriages begin with the milk on the wedding night and pehli rasoi in the kitchen.
Weddings are about nourishment, they're about abundance. May you always have food.
So if you ever overthought what to order on a first date or wondered what your plate says about your personality, this episode is for you.
It might seem like a very small thing, but if you are going on a first date, please be mindful of the fact that...
Hi, welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert, where we bring you expert advice from around the world. Welcome, Mohini.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We have always heard, एक मर्द के दिल का रास्ता उसके पेट से होते हुए जाता है. So what is really the relationship between food and love?
I would say मर्द ही नहीं, औरत और हर जेंडर के दिल का रास्ता पेट से होकर जाता है. We don't realize the very omnipresent importance of food in all aspects of our lives. Whether it is about your relationship, about your social position, about your standing, about your political beliefs and ideas, food is present everywhere.
हमारे जो old romantic textbooks होते थे, वहाँ पे it is written कि love is like a food. It is meant to be savored, it is meant to be indulged in. Because सुनते तो सभी हैं कि हाँ खाना शेयर करो, प्यार बढ़ता है. What's the scientific backing to it?
Love is, apart from emotional, it's a sensory feeling. And so is the act of eating.
Yes.
If I look at it from a sociological perspective, sharing food was one of the earliest ways in which individuals bonded with each other. And the entire concept of society came in.
Okay.
So we knew that, how people started settling in only when agriculture came into place. Usse pehle bhi there were groups and tribes formed, and they were formed on the basis of the fact that, people would go hunting together, or people would go gathering fruits and vegetables together.
Yeah.
The word companionship, in a lot of Nordic language, is also called compan, comes from that, the root, and pan is the word for bread.
Yes.
Hence, also the phrase breaking the bread together. So it's not just like, a simple thing. You become very close to each other when you eat together. Eating in itself is a very intimate act. So it's a very socio-political act as well, because we have this concept of commensality. Commensality, it's an entire structural system which defines whom you can eat with, what you can eat, and who to avoid while eating. तो आप किसके साथ अपने मुंह में निवाला डालते हैं, किसको आप अपने थाली को टच करने देते हैं, ये सब बहुत डिटरमिन करता है आपकी सोशल पोजीशन पे, आपके कल्चरल पोजिशनैलिटी पे. Commensality becomes a very important point in whom we allow in our inner space and in our intimate circle to share a meal with.
What should I eat when I'm going on a date, when I'm going out with the person I'm attracted to?
Eating is, as much as it is a delightful act, it is also an act which also brings out a lot of vulnerabilities, and they heighten especially when you go on a date. I once read somewhere that if you're going on a first date, don't order noodles because they require you to slurp. You wouldn't look very ladylike if you're eating that, and I was like very young and impressionable at that time.
And also burger, right? We should not order a burger on a first date.
Yes, there are so many things we have heard about the fact that don't eat burgers, and आजकल Instagram पे ऐसे reels का बहुत trend आ रहा है, like where men are like, oh, we don't really like a girl who goes to this fancy restaurant and order Italian food. हमें तो कोई अपने साथ गोलगप्पा खाने वाली चाहिए.
गोलगप्पा, दो परांठे खाने वाली लड़की.
Exactly. You can't decide a person's nature based on what they are eating. Eating out at a certain place, it's not only about your personal preference, it's also about the social class and social aspiration as well. People choose what to consume because the idea of consumption is pretty important over here. So there are so many people who would rather want to go safe by taking somebody out for coffee or chai or something like, on the first date. People choose not to have full meals because eating meal is also a very intimate act. You might not want to do it in front of a person.
Yeah.
So like, going out for something like, a coffee or a chai is like a more easy option because it ends quickly as well. So if you want to just like cut short your date, you can always like, finish your coffee and be like, okay, bye. Like, I have something else to cater to.
Exactly.
So that happens. And plus it is not in a very intimate space. Like, you're not sharing meals with somebody. For me, eating is a very sacred thing. I would like to eat with myself. It's very intimate. It's also the time when I feel the most vulnerable when I'm eating. Why would I want to show that vulnerability to somebody on the first date?
I can only eat with someone when I'm comfortable with them. Like otherwise, I would sort of prefer eating alone. That is why you call like very close people to dinners, for lunches.
So I think a lot of it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Food can either enhance the entire experience, like it can just be something very beautiful, or it can actually leave people scarred as well.
And where to go, like where to eat, where to have my first date. Does that say something about the person I am and will impact my future relationship with that person?
It also plays a role not only in terms of how things are going to be, but how you are going to be perceived with certain ways. So apne agar unko impress karna hai and you want to tell them that, oh, I'm a very well-traveled foodie, you might want to take them to a nice Vietnamese restaurant to recreate that particular banh mi which you had in Hoi An, which is like one of the best, and you're like, oh, remember, like, I had it back there, I loved it, I thought you should try that. That could be one thing. The other thing could be if you just want them to see your true colors, you'll be like, oh, I just want to have dal bhat and bhujia with my hand. I'd rather take you to like, a nice restaurant which serves very homely comfort food. मैं तो हाथों से खाऊंगी, अब आप अपना देख लीजिए. So it could be another thing, or it could be something which is very closely related to you. There are very few people in my life I have taken with me to have hot chocolate fudge with at Nirola's. Also because it has very fond childhood memories for me, and I would only want to share it with certain people and not everybody. It all depends on like, what you would want to reflect on when you go out to eat with somebody. And having said that, I also cannot overlook the dark side of the same thing, because there are times when people have very traumatic relation with food as well. So probably, there was a dish which you used to enjoy with your ex or like with your former partner. You wouldn't want to order that. You don't want to bring back the memories. If you are really trying to cut down on your diet and like your partner or like potential partner suggests that, hey, let's go to a steakhouse or let's go to have like, nice Punjabi food. It could also put you in a quagmire because you then really don't know whether to say no or whether to think about what you're going to eat there. We often use the term foodies very vaguely. Like, everyone's a foodie. Delhi mein to sare foodies hai. So basically foodies are the one who have been exposed to a lot of different cuisines and culinary cultures, and that depends on their social position. आपके पास कितने resources हैं, आप कितना well traveled हैं. Taste जो हम again एक word है बहुत commonly use करते हैं, somebody has a good taste. Taste is a very sociological concept rooted in society, like social position and your class position. You can have taste only when you have resources to fulfill that.
Exactly.
If I'm going on a date and I want to portray myself as somebody like, who might not have resources, but like, I have a good taste. So I'd like to take my partner to a place like, which I aspire to be. Like, I see both of us together as going to a nice Turkish place in the future and enjoying meals and taking notes about, the dolma was so nice. The sofre was so colorful on which our food was there. So if this is my aspiration from a relationship, I would do that, and food becomes that vehicle to like, fuel that aspiration.
So can I gauge someone's interest in me basis the food he orders, basis the place he takes me to?
Efforts count, and like efforts around food count as well. And personally, I think that's going to be a very make or break factor. I would surely see if the effort has been made. So like, from our previous conversations, have you picked up something which made you decide a particular restaurant?
Exactly.
Was it something that I mentioned that, I like this particular food, or like, this is my favorite cuisine? Have you taken that effort? So I think that's going to count. How you order is also important. So you might not know about cuisine, but are you taking the effort to just like, go to Google or Chat GPT and just like, read a little bit about what the cuisine is there, instead of shaming the other person ki, "Arey bhai, tum to pata nahi kya khate ho, hame to nahi pata." Also basic etiquette, which like, I feel everybody should have, is that, when you're eating, please make sure that the person sitting next to you is also enjoying their meal. I know food can make you feel like, food can make your world go round. You can just absolutely be in love with your food. But for once in a while, like, just like, अपनी plate से एक बार ध्यान उठा के देखिए कि सामने वाला जो है उसकी plate खाली हो रही है, or they're just sitting contemplating what to do with the food on their plate. Please make sure the other person is enjoying the food.
Exactly.
They are not feeling uncomfortable. You are not doing things which are making them feel intimidated. So one example of that could be if you are a carnivore and the other person is vegetarian. Neither of the parties should like, judge the other person in the manner that they start feeling threatened on the table. So everybody should have that representation that, okay, you're having your like, grilled fish, I'm having my salad, both of us are happy with our food.
Exactly.
There is no need to put like those glaring stares on somebody else's food and be like, "Hey, tum kya kha rahe ho?"
Judging. So can a foodie date like a non-foodie person? And what if in a marriage setup I am seeing someone and my family is very foodie? Like, what if the other person's family is like not interested? खाने पीने का शौक ही नहीं है.
It might become difficult sometimes because if your idea of socializing or having fun or like, just chilling revolves around food, then your partner might feel left out. So if you're a kind of person who'd be like, oh, I can travel 200 kilometers just to have that amazing coffee or dosa somewhere.
Yeah.
And like, your partner's like, I just want to sleep. I'm not even interested. It's not as much only about food. It's about like how much the other person or your partner is willing to adapt and adjust in that relationship. I think the dynamics change when families are involved, especially when you are the one who's going to stay with the family. And depending on what your gender is. But if it is a family and somebody says कि हमारे घर में तो मीट मच्छी बिल्कुल नहीं बनेगा and आप आएंगे तो आपको अपनी habits छोड़नी पड़ेंगी.
Exactly.
I think that is where intolerance rather seeps in. It could be for any of the partners. The fact that somebody has to change themselves to be loved or to be accepted is a problematic stance.
And
I
it's a
think
red
it's
flag,
reflected,
right?
Yeah, it is a red flag, and I think it is reflected most commonly among Indian households in food. People don't even realize how subtly they agree to sacrifice or compromise based on these food habits just to make the other person and their kins happy.
There was this movie Lapata Ladies and उसमें this woman was like, औरत का favorite खाना थोड़ी ना बनता है घर में. Like औरत का पसंदीदा खाना नहीं बनता है. It's always what men want and what men love. Women are expected to give up on their favorite food, give up on the way they cook, on the things they like.
घर मतलब माँ के हाथ का खाना.
Exactly.
पर माँ को क्या पसंद है बहुत सारे बच्चों को शायद वो नहीं पता होगा.
All the time the माँ was concerned about मेरे घर में मेरे पति और बेटे का favorite खाना क्या है.
Exactly. And patriarchy उस तरह से food में बहुत reflect होती है. Something as simple as कि सबके खाने के बाद हम खाएंगे या हम किसी को दे दें. And I think it happens like people think कि बहुत पुराने ज़माने की बातें हैं आजकल नहीं होता. I've seen it so many times like when people go on dates with their partners, the waiter is not serving. The woman will be like, okay, let me serve you like this thing. Let me put it on your plate. And sometimes we do that just very involuntarily, like in a very like not being very conscious about that. But that happens because this entire idea of women being nurturers and caregivers is so deeply rooted in our systems that whenever it comes to something around food, it is celebrated like you are the nurturer, you are the one who cares, which is why like you are associated with food. Now what to do about women who don't want to be caregivers, who don't want to be nurturers?
Exactly.
What do we do about them?
And in general they are just hungry, they have appetite. Women are associated to eat less, order lighter, and be more subtle about where to eat, how much to eat, how to eat. ये बहुत देखा जाता है. But on the other hand, we celebrate men who like eats a lot. कि भाई एकदम शेर बंदा है ये तो. He has a good appetite. Every guy should have like a good appetite. If he order boldly, तो that is also something they are associated with. तो कितना ज़्यादा difference है इन दोनों चीज़ों में.
Actually, this entire sexual connotation with foods. So like our food are also sexualized in the entire world. So we have something like there's this concept of dude food.
What is dude food?
So dude food is everything which is basically like super greasy, fatty, oily, and it's like associated with like when men would have drinks, they would want to have like something which is extremely like greasy and rich, and like so you would have your burgers, you'd have like those dripping patties or like crazy pizzas. And interestingly, they're called dude food. And I was like, okay, why do women not drink, or do women not feel hungry or an urge to eat these kind of food when they're drunk? But it also reflects how like certain food are thought to be very masculine. I'm going a little bit into anthropology here, but Levi Strauss, who's one of the very famous food anthropologists and the initial ones, he spoke about this idea about the culinary triangle. There is food which is roasted, there's food which is boiled, so like different kinds of food. But the idea about that the food which is roasted or which is cooked in an open fire is seen as a more public thing. So which is why you would see that in case of doner kebabs or shawarma, there are always men manning the stalls. Like you wouldn't see a woman like just like shaving off the doner kebab or something. It's like it's considered like very public food. Or like the kind of food where there's a barbecue. Like barbecue is the only time when men would take lead because like it's a public sphere. Like you do all the performance of like putting something on open fire and cooking it. Whereas the food which is cooked or boiled is always considered something which is like within the home. Simply like if somebody is sick, if there is an anushthan or a puja at home, it's always the food which is cooked inside the house. Like, if you have to serve it to gods or something, or maybe sick people, or you have to do it reverence.
Yeah.
So that becomes very personal, like very private.
Yeah.
And who takes care of the private sphere? The women. So this is a kind of comparison, of course, that's been very long. It came 7 decades before. It's been critiqued and everything, but I still find it very fascinating that how food is first compartmentalized based on the location, and then it is sexualized. If you are somebody who's eating a lot of junk food, the first thing is that, what if you put on a lot of weight?
Then what? This is the first statement. This is the first thing they'll say. Not like कि it's unhealthy. ये तुम्हारे लिए अच्छा नहीं है. तुम बीमार पड़ जाओगे. No, nothing. You'll gain weight.
And that is said with very serious concern, like this entire idea that, we are talking from a health perspective, it has nothing to do with your weight or something. But the fact is that there is a certain body type which has been very commonly ascribed to everybody. Men would expect, most of the men, I wouldn't say everybody, but they would expect women to stick on with that. So the very idea that, I was thinking about this movie, the Ranbir Kapoor movie in which,
Tu jhooti main
makar, right. So in that, he sees Shraddha Kapoor, stuffing her plate with all the baked goodies. So she's having croissants and everything. And he's like, wo ye bade bites de rahi thi aur mera dil us pe aa gaya. Which sounds really great. And people are like, oh my God, how progressive. The fact is, Shraddha was the one who was moving around in her perfectly hourglass body, wearing bikini on the beach. I'm pretty sure if she had a pouch belly or she had bulging arms, Ranveer wouldn't have said the same thing.
I agree.
Even if somebody glares at your plate in a certain way or say, oh, you're ordering that, I think that can also scar you in a lot of ways. People do not understand the kind of body image issues people can have and the complicated relations they have with food. It might seem like a very small thing, but if you are going on a first date, please be mindful of the fact that even a single jibe or a comment from you can scar somebody when it comes to dealing with their own bodies. जैसे कहते हैं कि जियो और जीने दो, तो प्लीज खाओ और खाने दो. या अगर किसी को नहीं खाना है तो उसे फोर्स मत करो. I'm somebody who's obsessed with cooking. I spend most of my time in the kitchen. A lot of women I have known also have a very complicated relation with food.
Exactly.
And with the kitchens, I know so many of my girlfriends have decided not to do cooking because they were always taught that the moment you learn to cook is very essential for you to be a good housewife.
Yeah.
And that is something they didn't want to do. And later on, when I went outside of India and I was teaching students, I realized that, my Russian students had the same thing. And they said that, we would make these pancakes called blini. And I never learned making them because my grandmother would say the moment you learn to make a perfect blini, that means you're ready for marriage.
Shit.
It's always associated with a very sharp gendered identity. And then people start thinking that, because you learn how to cook, which is why it's a woman's job. And when people cook, they always call cooking as labor of love, which it indeed is. But people tend to focus on love and they forget the labor part. They do not realize the kind of investment, the time, the effort which goes into cooking. And while it is great to do it for somebody you love, it should never go unacknowledged. And people should realize the amount of effort it takes for anybody to do that. And to expect somebody to do that only because of their gender or how they have been raised to do, I think is extremely unfair.
My relationship with food, does that affect the relationship with my future husband or partner?
Oh yeah, 100%. The fact that, how comfortable you are with your own self and what you are consuming and ingesting, putting in your body, says a lot about how you're going to be with other people. So I think at the end of the day, love is not only about what you feel for the other person, it is also about what the other person makes you feel like. And I think that's the same thing with food. You eat certain things because of the way you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
So whether you choose to be happy and delighted or you choose to feel bloated and nauseous also depends on the kind of relationship you share with the food, which is pretty much how you would feel in presence of your partner. So that is very important. And if there are certain battles you're already struggling with your own self, which are reflected through your dietary habits, I think they will somehow extend to your partner as well. You choose to be very particularly assertive about certain dishes. It also shows a certain kind of intolerance, which is always a no-go in a relationship. If you have eating disorders, if you have anorexia for that matter, there is also this fear of eating and you feel you might just throw up if you eat. A lot of it is also rooted in childhood traumas. So the fact that you're always cautious around food probably can also extend to the relationship, that you're always going to be cautious around the person. The fact that you always want to consume things in moderation, whether it is food or it is relationship, that you won't let things come very near you. or the fact that you have always been angry about like, people being like, being told about certain things, like, okay, like, you're told that, you should not eat more, or you should not eat less, or you should not eat a particular thing, that will eventually give you a lot of trust issues. You will have a very hard time to like, to be trusting things blindly. So these are all like, your personal traits, which definitely extend onto relationships. And the space where you see the personal traits most prominently is when it comes to food sphere. So if you're somebody who likes to turn the packet every time around to see how much of sugar content is there and like, how much of sodium in there, you would never be somebody who can like blindly trust anybody to be like, hey, I just like, got you something, you just have to try, it's a surprise. Honestly, if somebody would say that to me, I'll just like freak out. And I'm like, no, I need to know what is there.
Exactly.
And that comes from my own probably control and obsessive tendencies, and they extend from food to relationship. So one of my favorite Hindi writers, Krishna Sopti, has written this very beautiful novel called Mitro Marjani, which was about the sexual desires of a woman. And she has beautifully equated the unfulfilled sexual desires of a woman with hunger. About how Mitro was always hungry, always angry. Hanger state, which we now talk about, like, when you're hangry.
I'm angry.
Yeah, the state of being hangry is also related a lot to the unfulfilled desires of not being sexually satisfied, of not being loved. And I mean, in a relationship, I think that is so important because, like, people do go back to food if they find any sort of unfulfillment in there.
मैंने तो ये भी सुना है कि having spicy food can increase your attraction because you feel the same arousal and your body temperature while you're having spicy food is same as when you're sort of making love or like when you're attracted towards someone. Does like overlapping both of them can increase my attraction with that person and our bond in general?
We have something called as aphrodisiac foods. This very complicated term basically comes from the term Aphrodite, who's the Greek goddess of love, fertility, sexuality.
Okay.
So the food which has connotation, which helps with like sexual arousal or helps you feel more passionate, these are called aphrodisiac foods. There are herbs like that which are aphrodisiac. There are food like oysters which are considered aphrodisiac. And in popular culture, it's always thought like chocolates for that matter.
You were also talking about Shilajit, right?
Oh yeah, Shilajit as a herb. Like, that's like a very like Indian thing. Sometimes it's also about like, the entire scenario around you. Like, being told that, having chocolate dipped strawberries, like with somebody you like.
Yeah.
It would make you feel
sexualized.
It is sexualized, exactly.
So much. Like having chocolate and strawberries. हमने food को इतना moralized कर दिया है, इतना ज़्यादा हमने उसको अलग-अलग चीज़ों से we have started resonating and sort of attached it to. Why are so many wedding rituals is like around food?
Wedding ushers a lot of new beginnings. And a lot of those new beginnings are also around the idea of fertility. I mean, reproduction, fertility, which is often thing, at least in the South Asian context, or rather in global context, one of the main reasons why people would get married. Fertility at the same time is also associated with food. It's like, why the earth is called Mother Earth, because of the entire fertility concept. So like, there are so many things which are just like, on a very like, basic quintessential level, they're all associated with each other. Which is why weddings are about nourishment, they're about abundance, they're about like, when you're starting the new life together, what do you bless the couples for? You bless them for prosperity. You bless them for abundance. That abundance is not only in terms of the reproductive part of it, it's also that you always have food. I was reading one of Anandita Haksar's book about the fact and like, how in the Kashmiri wedding, there used to be these common folklores which were about like a girl is saying to her father that please marry me to a house where I get enough haq and rice to eat.
Wow.
So this entire idea that, when you look for a partner, you look for security, you look for warmth. And that security and warmth is often reflected through food.
Yeah.
So which is why like, in so many rituals, like, right from the Punjabi rituals of Roka or like, to the Northeastern rituals or Southern rituals, like, it's always around food. Like one of the Tamil rituals, which my friend told me about, jab aapka rishta pakka hota hai, is also the time when you have idiyappam.
Idiyappam.
So idiyappam is this like vermicelli noodle-like pancake. And why it's had it, like, the noodles are steamed together. So it shows the coming together and the union of two families. So like, just like, the noodle strands are intertwined with each other in idiyappam, the families are coming together. I think it's prevalent in a lot of cultures that, when you have the fairas around the Vedi, the fire, especially in the Hindu households, is also thought of as Agni Dev. And then you feed the fire, you please the gods. So the time when you're going to put rice into it, you put dhan into it, any staple wheat in the region. So it's also about pleasing the gods with food.
Yeah.
So food is the ultimate pleaser. In certain rituals, the regional cuisines and ingredients become very important. Like in Bengali tradition, and pardon my pronunciation, I might be butchering it. So they have this concept of totto. I think that's how it's pronounced. So in which the families on the morning of the wedding send a huge ilish or hilsha fish dressed up as bride and groom with vermilion and all to each other's house. And the idea is to of course, apart from symbolizing the union between two families, it is something very regional because ilish is a very prized fish. It's it's known to be one of the favorite fish among a lot of Bengalis. So the idea is to also start with something which is very cherished. The plumpest fish is sent across. There's also this ritual when the Bengali bride comes home, she is made to hold a live fish.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to the fact that, the women of the house should know how to deal with food. And because fish is such an integral part of the diet, you should not be scared of the food that you're eating. You should know, how to tame that, how to handle it all across. New brides enter the house. They are made to, either cook something, so that hence the entire concept of, people have pehli rasoi or chauke chadhana, whatever they say in, their own language. But this entire idea is to assign that duty to the women that you are now somebody in the house. You are going to be in charge of the kitchen, the food. So you acquaint yourself with how it's going to be.
So on that point, पहले के time पे there were rituals because the dynamic was such कि आपको करना पड़ता था और ना ही आपके पास option होता था, ना ही knowledge होती थी. But when we are in 2026 and next time someone is telling you to maybe do पहली रसोई, obviously you should be happy to do that, but for a moment you should stop and reflect. Do you really want to do? Does that really resonate with you? You believe in that or not? One of my close friend, so he recently got married and he did the pehli rasoi.
I think that makes all the sense, because if you are the person who belongs to the kitchen and you love being around in kitchen, you would love to be introduced to that. Just assuming that a woman would always want to be in the kitchen is not a great thing. There was a saying which was, women belong in the kitchen, men belong in the kitchen, everybody belongs in the kitchen because that is where food is.
Exactly.
So I think it should not solely be a woman's responsibility to be doing pehli rasoi. And of course, it's great to be acquainted with the new relatives, it's great to be acquainted with the kitchen, but it should not be done as a performative act where you are judged based on your cooking skills. Of how well you can cook the halwa or chana puri. Any kind of effort which is a labor of love should be acknowledged.
And what about the doodh one, the doodh theory that you were telling me?
Oh yes, the very ever prominent, made very popular by Bollywood, the fact that, on the first night before you consummate your marriage, you drink milk. And it's very interesting because milk and lactose specifically is not believed to have any of the arousal powers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an entire parallel theory about how milk is seen as sexual, and there's also so much of symbolic dissonance with that. But in this specific case, it's actually not the milk, it's probably what is mixed in the milk. So people either used to mix some kind of aphrodisiac, spices or herbs in there. So probably it could be shilajit, it could be something else which is mixed in the milk, because milk is a good carrier.
Yeah.
Which is why milk becomes symbolic of making people feel more comfortable for arousal. And thanks to Bollywood, it has given people the weirdest of fantasy. Drinking milk has become such a common thing to do on your first night. It's very funny because people don't even take into account what if the other person is lactose intolerant. You might just end up taking trips to the bathroom all through the night if you're having milk.
If I am looking for my future husband or my future partner, what are some red flags that I should look for?
So I think from the perspective of food, I feel the first thing is that the person is not tolerant about your eating habits. And tolerance does not really mean that, he's really going to stop you from eating. It's about something as simple as if they are making judgments about what you're eating. Passing simple jibes that, you eat this, you eat that.
आजकल तो नया system चालू हो गया है, in 2026, because we all are protein, the meal does not have enough protein.
Exactly.
और अगर कोई protein ही खा रहा है, if someone is eating just protein, they're like, this doesn't have enough fiber.
Precisely.
Tokna.
I think it's this entire idea of shaming somebody for their food habits.
Yeah.
The underlying idea is respecting other person's choices and leaving room for communication in a fact that it is not threatening. Of course, we want to think the best about our partners. There's always a way to be respectful without trying to be daunting or intimidating. So I think that, and I think for me personally, the red flag is going to be if there's a person who does not enjoy exploring different cuisines.
Oh.
Like I'm somebody who's traveled a lot, who loves going to new countries and places only to eat good food. So if I find a person who's like, हाँ मतलब like खाना कौन खाता है or something like that, it's a huge red flag for me. I think I'm not going to go on a second date with the person. If I make a person try out a new cuisine out of sheer excitement and the other person is like, इससे तो हम butter chicken और दाल मखनी खा लेते.
Exactly.
I am not sitting there for another 15 minutes. I'm just leaving. I'm paying my bill and going.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't like butter chicken, I don't like dal makhni, but if I'm going to Paris, I'm not going to have dal makhni.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to have butter chicken. I will come back home and I will eat that.
Exactly. I think that is just so important to understand the cultural context. And similarly, like, if a person is intolerant for other people as well. So I'm a vegetarian, but I know the politics behind being vegetarian in South Asia. Okay. And like, that meat eating is just not simply like, a personal choice. It also shaped by years of cultural context and politics and everything. So if I am with a person who is also vegetarian, but they are sitting in front of me and they are being like, oh, these meat eaters, they are the ones who are so morally corrupt and they should not be eating that. Pata nahi kaise kha lete hai? I think I'll have a problem because then that means the person is quite intolerant. And if they can be intolerant toward other people, they can definitely be intolerant towards me at any point in time.
मैंने से सुना है कि whenever you are going on a date, try to order something that would annoy someone. Like you should see that version of the person you're going on a date with.
Because I think on some days I can be a very annoying person and I would often go on dates with people who I was kind of annoyed with, only to annoy them further by taking them to certain restaurants. I hope I'm not the only person who does these things, but I think the entire idea is to also take people out of their comfort zone and to see that, how they react. So if there's some person who's been constantly telling me about how he hates every single cuisine, he doesn't eat vegetables, paneer is the only vegetable he eats and all of these things, I'd rather want to take him to a very plant forward place, which has loads of flavors and stuff and all, just to see whether they enjoy that or they become even more militant about their own ideas. Yeah. Because I think it's not going to be about the food at the end of the day, it's going to be about how they are going to be as a person when they are taken out of their comfort zone.
Exactly.
Would they like it? Are they going to be agitated? Are they going to be really snapping at me? Yes, exactly.
First date pe thoda sa considerate raho, go to places you actually like, but maybe on a second date, third date to even know them even more in detail. So I think
when you talk about first date, now as a culinary anthropologist, I would like to say that, offering food is also a very personal act and that extend to relationships as well.
Exactly.
So to have this idea that, there'll always be food for you and it'll be offered, as we have been told by our scriptures, कि अगर घर पे खाना भी कम हो जाए, mama's like कि guest आए हैं तो सब पहले खा के जाएंगे, हम चाहे कम खा लें.
अतिथि देवो भव.
Exactly. While these are beautiful thoughts and I really respect them, I also feel that, it takes over that idea of you consuming something for pleasure and it just undermines your hunger. And hunger is very proverbial in that sense. In a relationship, it's extremely important that you don't stay hungry. Please keep yourself satiated, whether it is through food, whether it is through emotional intimacy, whether it is through whatever you have desires for. But staying hungry is a very foolish act. So never stay hungry for anybody. Because once you are nourished, you'll be able to think a lot better, take better decisions, and respect yourself a lot more.
I agree. So you have written some gastro poetry, right?
Yes. That's how I like to identify myself. I'm a spoken word poet who works around this niche sub-genre of poetry called as gastro poetry. So there is food poem. There are food poems everywhere. And then there is poetry which speaks about food being an intrinsic part of every emotion, every action, and so on and so forth. Although I'm not somebody who writes on love, I did attempt to write something last year on Valentine's Day, which was about food and love. So it is called The Taste of Love, very cheeky title. But I'm just going to read one excerpt from that. I love in the languages which can only be expressed in pounds, ounces, grams, and liters. I dole out my heartfelt feelings from the cups, spoons, ladles, and jars. My affection for my girlfriends simmer like the jackfruit biryani on dum and sizzle like the blistered Aleppo peppers on the bed of creamy hummus. My love is comforting, warm, and reassuring. That which always tell you that you don't always need a man to tell you how much you are valued. And that is the sapphic taste of love I deeply enjoy. I usually talk about love from a very political angle, but yeah, I mean, food is political, so is love, and it's great to bring both of these together.
Amazing, amazing. So before we move towards the end of this conversation, I would like to play a small game.
Wow.
So I'll be saying some lines, statements, or a situation, and you have to tell me, is it dateable or a red flag, or just neutral or depends? Or if you have any reasoning, you can tell that.
Perfect, sounds great.
Doesn't share fries.
Red flag.
Oh. Orders for you without asking.
Oh, red flag, absolutely. If someone's ordering you without asking, they either have to know you very well, that they want to do is as an act of love. But otherwise, if your agency is not taken into account, I think it's slightly scary. Maybe I love fries in other parts of the day. Today, I want to have a Caesar salad. Either you should know that or you should just let me order for myself.
Exactly. What if he or she judges someone for being vegetarian or non-vegetarian?
I think for anybody that is a red flag, because there should be no judgment when it comes to love and food. So people can love whoever they want, they can eat whatever they want.
Keep saying, I don't eat carbs.
Depends. If you are also a fitness enthusiast and you hate carbs as the other person, maybe both of you can gel together. If you're somebody who loves food, might not be the great idea to be with that person, because then they might also be judging you for eating carbs and they might just end up hating you as well.
Ask for a Golgappa date.
Dateable.
Dateable.
Yeah.
Only eats street food or just goes to fancy restaurant only?
I think anything which is compartmentalized is problematic. That's a red flag. Okay. One should be open to experiences. So you might love street food, you might love also dining at the Taj, and you might just love traveling to a new country to try their local cuisine. I think it's all about flexibility, both in relationships and in your food choices.
Loves cooking.
Oh, dateable, totally.
Dateable, 5-star. Mixes everything together in a plate.
Personally, according to me, I think it will totally depend because it speaks a volume about a person. But if you're also the person who is pretty much like that, it should be fine. If you're somebody who gets bothered a lot about this thing, it would be a good reflection to see if you want to be with that person. Also, I think such things are also very socially and culturally connected based on how you have been raised, which have been your culinary cultures which you are part of. So instead of just dissing it or liking it, it's important to just reflect a little bit about why people do what they do.
Eating with open mouth.
Slightly problematic and gross.
Orders the cheapest thing on the menu.
That's okay. I mean, you're still dateable. Everybody has a different social and economic balance. Somebody wouldn't want to spend that much on food, which is absolutely okay. And if there's something else they would like and I like them, I'll order it for them.
Never pays for the date.
Oh, this has to be like a 50-50 scenario. We are always going Dutch, and if you're somebody who's not paying basically only for miserly reasons, I think it reflects a lot about you as a person. If you're not footing the bill, maybe you're not ready to foot the responsibilities as well.
Last one. Always takes the picture of the food before eating.
Dateable, because I do the same.
Oh.
So I think if both of us are doing that, we can exchange notes, so that will be fun.
It was so much fun, bhai sahab. I learned so much.
It was amazing. I enjoyed a lot.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Comment below what would you want to ask Mohini next. So till then, Shabba khair, bye bye, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Bye bye.